This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative. On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And we are speaking with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, who is a candidate for Congress in Arizona, but also a proud Muslim who has fought the battle over the years against Islamic extremism. I remember, Doctor, when you testified in Congress, and Peter King was conducting those hearings, and you were not intimidated by those who challenged your commitment to your faith because you were willing to criticize. Talk about college campuses. I've talked to a number of Jewish students who are fearful of walking to class, will take classes on Zoom, because they know when they walk on the campus on the way to class, they're going to be verbally assaulted, hopefully not physically assaulted, but verbally assaulted by those who make some ugly statements. And then when they go to class, they have to sit next to some of these characters. What happened to our college campuses?
Well, what happened is billions of dollars of Chinese money, Qatari money, and others have gotten a lot of return on their investment, which is to indoctrinate a culture that ultimately is collectivist, is about tribalism, is about victim-mindedness, in which all of our issues and complaints are somebody else's fault and not our own. And then if you happen to be a youngster that wants to challenge that narrative and be independent-minded and look back at the founding principles of America, rather than blaming America, but blame, the autocrats and kleptocrats and others, then you're marginalized as somehow a hater. And it's unfortunate. And that's why, Charlie, at 18, I remember meeting him when he was just out of high school. And he's like, listen, I believe in education. And he's one of the smartest kids I had met at the time. And yet he said, our university system's broken. And he proudly says he didn't get a bachelor's degree. He didn't go to undergrad, but yet knew he had to go to campuses in order to remind our kids, my kids. And this is why he was such a great role model for my kids. I mean, I'm Muslim, and one of the greatest role models for my children is a devout, conservative Christian. And I went and debated in Oxford about whether Islam is compatible with democracy. And as a Muslim, I said, today it's not. But in Oxford, before 1789, you couldn't say Christianity was either until we had that constitution. And Charlie went to Oxford a few months later and made the same comments, was defending the state of Israel and saying that the Free Palestine movement is all about victimization and not about ownership. And he really wanted to have a battle of ideas, and the universities have lost that. Mm-hmm. It's not about ideas and challenging authority and challenging the establishment. That's what the universities were supposed to be. And actually, as you look at the 60s riots on universities and others, I think this time is even worse now, because what they're doing is they're going after the thought leaders, not just random violent acts on campuses. This is going after thought leaders, is what we see with the assassination of Charlie and so many other attacks. It's about destroying the head of movements, not just the movement.
So what do we do, Doctor? I mean, people are we go on to the next subject. We spoke about what happened in a church in Minneapolis. We've seen what's happened to other politicians. By the way, politicians on the right and on the left. People, I think they've just given up, and they say we can't do anything about it. Address that.
Yeah, I think, one of the differences this time is that the martyr for ideas, for freedom, for liberty is a name that's known, and his name will live on. His name will live on, in which it can represent whatever institutes, movements that get represented. There will be millions of Charlie Kirks out there of all faiths. Yes, he was a man of Jesus, a man of Christianity, and a man of God, but there will be Charlie Kirks out there of all faiths and stripes and origins and others who will be challenging authority and wanting to have that civil discourse that then they can't kill millions, And at the end of the day, that's what this is about can we have movements? And as Ben Shapiro and others, have been talking recently, that let's go back, let's keep going to the campuses, protect our youth so they can have these conversations. Like you were mentioning on anti-Semitism, the Jewish community should feel safe to go to Shabbat, to go to their services and be public about their defense of Israel and their beliefs. Yes, the pro-Palestinians can express too, but that cannot be an area in which we fear, but rather in which we embrace the binds that we have. And I remember serving on the USS El Paso off the shores of Somalia as a doc. My supply officer was Mormon. My XO was Protestant. The CO was Catholic. The deck officer was Kaplan, who was Jewish. I'm the doc. I was Muslim. They're atheists. And yet the only thing we die for is America. And we need to renew. If our campuses are going to succeed in teaching my kids, your kids, so many other grandkids, the future, we have to what are the things we agree on? What is Americanism? What does our Constitution mean? What is freedom? And at the epitome, at the top of that list, freedom is about speech and the ideas. And once we say, well, these ideas incite and we need to suppress that, we turn into Saudi Arabia, where they say, oh, if you criticize Islam, you're criticizing the monarch and the government, so we put you in prison. Most of the people in prison in Saudi Arabia are people of conscience. And America is going to turn into that if we continue with this assassination culture.
Yeah. We got a minute and a half left, Rev. Go ahead.
Okay.
You have a question?
Yeah, a minute and a half. Gosh, what do we do with a minute and a half?
Well, we've been told as clergy, keep it short. That's not the first time we've heard that.
Yeah, first of all, let me say thank you for the role that you play in your community there and in our nation at large as a Muslim. Understanding that even the Muslim community has gone through a lot over the last 20 years since 9/11 here in America when it comes to marginalization. But to be able to stand for these issues and give us a little bit of insight. I wish we had more time.
Give us a little Can I make a suggestion, Rev? Why don't we keep him on for another segment if it's okay, Dr. Jasser? Can we keep you on for another segment?
Be happy to.
Okay.
Be happy to.
All right.
Wow, wonderful. Then let's go to a break. Okay.
All right, we'll take a break. We're going to come back with more Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. I am very, very heartened by what I hear, Doctor. I wish you well in your campaign. And what I've always admired about you is you're not afraid to say what others want to say but don't. So that voice can't be silenced, as you said before. Interestingly, in Hebrew, the word for community, kihila, has the word voice in it, kol. You want to be an important member of your community, you have to use your voice. We'll be back.
Amen.
So stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Networks.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
And we're continuing a conversation with Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, a respected physician, a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy, founder of the American Islamic Forum on Democracy, candidate for Congress, author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim's fight to save his faith. And he's a husband, he's a father, he's quite a guy.
And also understanding of what it means to be the other, what it means to be one of the marginalized groups within American society. And what was your journey, Dr. Jasser?
Yeah, I have to tell you the reason, I didn't come out of thin air. I'm not sort of a mutation. My grandfather, fought for freedom in Syria, was a newspaperman and a businessman, was in prison for his ideas as Syria went through coup after coup. And my father then had to escape, came to the United States, got political asylum with my mom, and I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin and learned that, our legacy is to embrace and celebrate the freedoms that this country gave us to interpret our own faith in a way that Muslim majority countries never allow them to interpret it. And that freedom is the legacy that I never thought would be at risk. And then 9/11 happened, and realized that the radicals came over here to attack the country that I grew to love. And, now my children, as they all have been born after 9/11, but now are all in either pre or post-college age, we realize that the axis of that red-green axis, which is not only the Islamists and the green, but the red, the Chinas and socialists of the world, have radicalized also. So we see extreme radicalization in the last 10 years of the far left that mirrors what I saw in the Islamist community and their radicalization, where the ends justifies the means. And I've always said it's like the red-green axis is one side wants to give everybody free stuff at somebody else's expense and also take away your free speech. And those two things are really, the epitome of how people lose their freedoms. And, that's sort of been my journey. And what, if we're going to leave a legacy, it's in our universities, as Charlie did. We have to feed a generation that wants to drink from the nourishment of ideas. Once we lose that, we become robots and inhuman.
Wow. Here you have Charlie Kirk on a college campus who valued discourse, debate, who challenged people. As you said earlier, Doctor, if you disagree with me, said Charlie, come to the front. I want to talk to you. I want to hear your side, and I want you to hear my side. That spirit has been diminished and is potentially being destroyed because people don't want to hear the other side. It's my point of view. You're entitled maybe to your wrong opinion, but I don't want to hear it. And social media, that's what I want you to talk about. Social media has exacerbated the tension because you can get away with it. You can say anything you want. You can destroy character, and there's no accountability.
And that's why the extreme left and the Islamists are hand in hand, and that to them, the social media, I've talked in Congress about jihadi cool and how you have these these rappers and jihadists like Hassan Piker and others that have millions of followers that my kids tell me about. They're on Discord channels and other gaming channels and others. That's the jihadi cool. And in the far left, you have the radical leftists that are mixing up the Italian flag with the Palestinian ones, but yet they fly the Palestinian ones because they think that's the ultimate demon is the West and America and Israel and other demonizations. And that has viral potency and radicalizing because they don't look at deep information like Charlie wanted to engage students on and understanding what our founding fathers were all about, what the colonies were, how the Constitution came to be. No, they want 10, 15-second clips to epitomize the ideas. So that's what we're fighting. And unless we, as people behind the mics, wherever we might be, his mic is bloodied and he's gone to heaven, we're looking above us to see if we're going to continue his legacy. And his legacy has to be to empower our kids to not be fearful, to bring more to the next turning point event so that they're not alone and we have more Charlies that will pop up because they can't kill us all.
No.
Doc, you've known Charlie. He was 31 years old when we lost him, and it was a loss. But you knew him for more than a decade. You got to see him grow. You got to see him evolve. When he went up against President Trump over the Epstein files, because he was holding the president to his promise to release those files. He then quieted on that, but it seemed to reflect an inner tension, a conflict between his personal convictions and values and political loyalty. Was that an ongoing challenge for him?
Listen, I don't believe that was. I think it was what you saw before you is what you see is what you get. Is that, the Epstein files and a lot of the things that were told to us as citizens from Fauci's declarations to others that we wanted to question he questioned. And now when somebody he trusts got in the White House, he trusts him and pushed as a citizen should. But then at the end of the day said, listen, I'm a citizen. This is my commander-in-chief. This is my president. And I'll trust that he's doing, what we asked for. And, similarly, he trusted me. And if you look in the last year, he said some of the most critical things he has said in his career on Islam. He was very open in the past 6 months about his what's happening to Europe because of Muslim immigration. And I agreed with him. And it's not because they're Muslim, but because of Islamist immigration. And you should see the stuff online today from radical Islamists. There's a piece coming out in the next few days about what the imams from what Yasser Qadi in Texas and others have said about their joy of this assassination, which is just horrific to say that. And yet he trusted me as a human being and realized that we had to fight the threats directly. We can't just sort of, pussyfoot around about what's happening. You defeat ideas with better ideas, and that's what he respected me for, and that's what I respected him for as human beings. And people are just intentionally missing that fact when they talk about Charlie.
Dr. Reverend Bernard and I had a discussion last night before coming on the air, and there are clips of Charlie saying things, and if all you know is the statement without the context, I think you have, or you may have, a very distorted understanding of what Charlie really represented. And you don't know if any of those clips are AI generated. But listening to you today, this was a very decent human being who loved his country, loved his family, who didn't want us to go in a different direction that contravened the values of democracy. And yet he could be provocative, and there's nothing wrong with being some people think that only if their side says things that disturb, that's okay. But when the other side says it, now you got to do something about it. You can't tolerate it. We become very protective of our point of view, but we're very dismissive of someone who dares to say something that differs from us. But
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just going to say we should be able to continue debate, but keep it in the realm of words. It should not turn into acts of violence. 100%.
Right.
Doctor?
Yeah, I have to say, I've been defending provocateurs against Islam for decades now. People who burn the Quran. I went to the Netherlands and Wilders and others. I've now gotten close to, I'm on the board of the Ayaan Hirsi Ali Foundation. Ayaan started out very, she's moved closer. She's gotten to know Muslims like me to where we're fighting Islamism and not the faith itself. So I know provocateurs. Charlie's not a provocateur. Charlie's ideas were infinitely rational. He talked about the family, quotes that he would taken out, they're not even out of context. Quotes about endorsing the family and endorsing the fact that, people should get married younger and have kids younger is not anti-homosexual and anti-gay. That's just portrayed that way because that's the agenda that the left wants to push, is that somehow this is hate. It's not hate speech. It's about ideas that he believes in, just like many of us believe in. And if they believe in something different, they should counter that. But that is not something that he does from provocation, but rather just from belief.
Well, we've come almost to the end of the program. And Rev, in our tradition, we have a Judaism that is replete with blessings. There's a blessing over everything. And it says when you walk into a room and there's a crowd there, a crowd of people, it doesn't limit what the number is, but a crowd of people, recite this blessing. Thank you, God, for creating people with different faces and different minds. And you know that those people are different than you are. But you're thanking God for having, brought into this world people who are ready to challenge and confront. And we cannot lose that kind of appreciation for difference. And that's what I see happening here. And on a college campus, to me, that's the height of hypocrisy. That colleges that are supposed to teach you how to think, not what to think, but how to think, have become places of indoctrination and places that, generating this kind of hatred of the other, whoever the other may be in your eyes?
Well, Rabbi, you know, and Dr. Jasser knows that college campuses should be a place for debate, to discuss the issues, the exchange of ideas. And if we can't do that civilly without the threat of violence, then we're on a downward spiral as a nation. Dr.
Yeah.
Jasser?
Yeah, it's interesting. My parents came to the U.S., obviously, not only because of ideological freedom, but economic freedom. So what I don't understand is how a culture in which you have most of the startups in the planet coming from America and the West and Israel, those economic startups, you want your kids to come up with the next AI technology, and that's what my son's studying, and other things. And yet other ideas on faith, on politics, on government, those new ideas can't be challengeable, those are provocative and thus should be marginalized. That doesn't make sense. It's un-American. At the very core of being American is challenging the establishment, is having ideas. I saw my own profession demonize doctors within our community that didn't believe in the public health pronouncements of the left, that wanted to shut down businesses and force vaccines and other things. And this is another area that Charlie and I got very close together on, is we agreed that healthcare should not be used as a weapon, and yet the greatest healthcare system on the planet became autocratic, and we're always just a few years away from losing those freedoms. And I hope Charlie's name, just as in the Jewish tradition it says, may his memory be a blessing.
Yeah.
Charlie's memory can never vanish. We need 1 million Charlie Kirks on the universities, or we will lose the next generation. He epitomized the thought leaders of the next generation, and we need so many more of him.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. By the way, you want to consider running for mayor of the city of New York? Wait, I think we need.
We have a Sunni Muslim, but he's not conservative.
Yeah, he's totally the other direction. Socialism, maybe communism, and his views on Israel. That's another shocking development. Anyway, Dr. Jasser, an honor having you back on the air with us, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Thank you, Dr.
Don't stop
for being
doing
on
what
the
you're
program.
doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. God bless. And we'll be back with more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on Red Apple Radio Network.
The Rev and the Rabbi on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Rev and the Rabbi. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, when you and I spoke before the interview with Dr. Jasser, we both recognized that Charlie Kirk said some things that were very, very provocative. But no matter what, and there was a clip that you had sent me where the woman listed some of the things, and she said, no matter what he said, and I can vehemently disagree with some of the things he said, nothing warrants assassination.
No, nothing at all. And, we want, with respect to our guests, Dr. Jasser talked about, Charlie Kirk not being anti-gay, but, he said it. It wasn't AI. He said gays should be shot. Hey, look, here's the thing. When we say things publicly now, they are captured instantly, memorialized, and then distributed globally within seconds. So we have to be conscious of what we say and how we say it. And one of the tenets of our Christian faith, if you're going to call yourself a Christ follower, Jesus said something powerfully. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? So it means that he presents himself as the standard by which we should judge our way, our life, our truth claims, our words, thoughts, motives, actions, and attitudes. All right. So if we put our words up against his standard, we find ourselves deficient.
Well,
and that's the problem. So you can't have that contradiction of claiming, I am one identity, and yet you engage in something that is contradictory to that identity. It creates a problem. Now, look, if you're an entertainer and you're doing this, as part of your spiel, part of what you do. Okay, I understand that. But in the case of a social activist, this is not supposed to be entertainment. This is
Yeah.
supposed to be genuinely how a person feels and what they believe.
Yeah. Now, I'm just concerned about things taken out of context, because when someone says, quoting Christians, so I am the way, what does that say to those who don't follow the teachings of Jesus, those of different faiths?
That's the that's
right?
the exclusivity of Christianity.
Yeah.
And that's
But I can turn that around and say, you see, you are
course,
right.
of
You're prejudiced
course.
against my faith, your faith. It's triumphalism. It's your faith
Yeah,
that matters.
and
Mine doesn't.
yeah, that's one of the things that has to be reckoned
Right,
with
right.
by Christians as they speak to other people. I have no problems with it. All right, that Jesus presents himself as the standard of truth, and what is he talking about when he says that? Are we on the air? Because
Yeah,
this is good stuff.
we are on the air.
But you understand what I'm saying? When Jesus presents himself as such, he says, "Learn from me. I'm meek and I'm lowly." So when he said those words, he was pointing to his character. Now let's look at his encounters as recorded in the four Gospels. All right, look at his interactions with the Jewish people. Look at his interactions with Gentiles, with the Syrophoenician woman, with the Samaritan woman. In other words, I am the standard by which you judge your interactions with people. He quoted from the Hebrew scriptures, love
Yeah.
your neighbor as yourself. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, but love your neighbor as yourself. So he's presenting a standard, a very high standard for us.
You see
And we have to wrestle through
the
that.
difference.
So now some translate that into exclusivity
Yeah.
of faith,
But you see the difference,
and
Rev?
religion.
You're giving a context. In today's world, there is no context. There's a soundbite. There's one line. And the entire point of view is predicated on one or two sentences, but not in what context was it said. And if you disagree, what's the refutation? Give the refutation. We don't allow for both sides anymore. Social media doesn't allow for both sides. It's my point of view. Yours doesn't merit any kind of respect. And unfortunately, that's what we're living with.
We're taught in seminary, all right, hermeneutical principles, which are the principles of interpretation. And one of the key principles is the context. You can't extract something out of its context and use it any way
Right.
you want. We can't do that with words. We can't do that with our doctrines, our teachings, our theologies. We have to understand the context first and then build our ideas from that reality.
Interesting.
I'm preaching here, Rabbi.
You are, and I'm writing
Sunday
everything
morning.
down. But if you look at Hillel and Shammai, contemporaries of Jesus, one of the things that Hillel did when he presented his point of view was to quote the other side first. He said, "This is what you're saying. Now let me tell you what I'm saying." And by quoting the other side first, he was showing respect for a different point of view. Right?
Yeah.
The other side now doesn't matter. The other side now is not worth repeating. And yet when you look at Hillel, Shammai, Jesus, as you talked about the entire context, we don't give a whit about context anymore. It's not important anymore. Get that soundbite in there, that very often a very jarring soundbite, and we base our whole opinion of someone on the soundbite and not everything
And that's
around
the
it.
thing. Yeah, Rabbi, because look, even if you disagree with Charlie Kirk, and I disagree with him in many of the things that he said, I understood where he's coming from because I have been in that context of his within the evangelical world here in America. But listen to the name of his tour, Prove Me Wrong Tour. All right? Prove me wrong with words, with exchange, with debate, not a bullet.
Yeah.
I have to disagree
And-
with that violence 100%.
And if you look at his career, if you look at his behavior on campuses in various settings, always challenging, always saying, I know you may disagree, come up front here, challenge me here. There's room for both of us to argue with each other, not room for one to destroy the other. And unfortunately,
Absolutely.
right, in today's climate, you don't hear there's room to argue with one another. There's room to assassinate the other is what you're seeing. And by the way, we've seen the hatred on the right and on the left. I remember we talked about what happened in a Buffalo supermarket, right? Remember what happened in Pittsburgh, right? Those people were on the right that committed the horrific crimes. And then you go back and you see Republicans who killed and injured seriously Steve Scalise on a baseball field. You saw it in Texas, you saw it in Utah, you saw it in Florida. It's happening on different sides, and we can't simply say, "You see what the other side is doing."
Well, that's
you got to look
problem.
in both directions, and some people don't want to do that.
Rabbi, it concerns me the intensity and how quickly we came to conclusions, we being our society, about the perpetrator of this crime of murder against Charlie Kirk, right? Immediately, it was a radical leftist. It may be, but how do we know that before we even identify the perpetrator?
Well,
but this is what we do. We draw conclusions and we throw it into a blanket pot. And it's left and right are guilty. Democrats and Republicans are guilty of these things.
Can you imagine you're on a jury and you say, "I don't want to hear the facts. I already have the verdict," right? That's
a scary notion.
That is exactly what's happening. Rev, this has been a very, very substantive conversation today with Dr. Jasser, you and I, and that's the purpose of the program, to come here and to talk to one another, to listen to one another, and both are important. Can't have one without the other, because then you have what's called, you don't have dialogue, you have duologue. You're both talking at the same time and not listening to the other person. So thankfully.
Let's see if we have a minute. In your Hebrew scriptures, it talks about just weights and balances.
Right.
The principle is balance is the key to life. Why is balance? Why are just weights important? Not just in a physical transaction of material goods, but in thought, in life itself. Why must our weights be just, Rabbi?
There are two sides to the scale, right? There are two sides on the scale. It's not just lopsided. Two just weights. And we need that, right, in our conversation and our communication. And I thank you for concluding the program today with a Jewish source. It means a lot to me. All right, thank you, Rev.
Yeah. And thank you. Always a great conversation and a great guest. It was wonderful. And thank you, our listeners, for tuning in every Sunday morning to join the Rev
and the Rabbi.
Till next time, God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Rev and the Rabbi. You can hear The Rev and the Rabbi Sunday mornings at 7. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?